Salam alaikum and good evening to those of you hanging out with dinner to listen to what I think will be a really exciting conversation this evening. This is Professor Aminah Al Deen with Critical Talk, which is a production of Sound Vision. And we are being run on Galaxy 19 satellite, Apple TV, Amazon Firestorm. I know it's called Amazon Fire TV. And you can pick us up on YouTube. And I hope that you have some comments. I have with me this evening um, two very interesting guests who are going to talk about, because we haven't talked about it, and I haven't read anything about it. Um, what's happening with Muslim students and those students who support them who are not Muslim on college campuses. We've read about presidents, we've read about organizations, we've read about a almost a I don't know what the war term is for when you make direct attacks on students who thought they were in places where there was freedom of speech and they were supposed to learn about having a voice. So this evening with me, I have Dr. Nisa Muhammad, who is the president of the Association for Chaplaincy and Spiritual Life in Higher Education. That is a long title. And the past president of the Association of Muslim Chaplains. I also have Salman Khan, who is the co-founder of Muslim Campus Life and the founder of Hidayah Services. Muslim Campus Life is a non-for-profit organization that is advocating for the needs of Muslim students on college campuses. Hidayah Services is a Muslim college counseling service where Salman guides Muslim students through the college application process. That's interesting. I will remember that and call you back, Salman, for something else. Okay. First, I know that there was a summit, a Muslim campus life summit, to which I was not invited. But that's okay because you all are going to fill all of us in on what went on there. You can tag team, it's a conversation, lay back. Let's get it on.
So, assalamu alaikum. Thank you, Dr. Aminah, for having us on the show. And so, this is a really crucial topic that we're going to be discussing this evening.
Absolutely.
At the Muslim Campus Life Summit, thanks to Salman Khan and his work and his co-founders, it was an opportunity for people who work with Muslim students around the country, whether that be in chaplaincy, whether that be in student affairs, whether that be in diversity, equity, and inclusion information, depending upon what area you are on the campus. People who work with Muslim students got an opportunity to come together at Duke University to talk about all that's going on.
Wait a minute. How old is something called Muslim Student Campus Life?
Muslim Campus Life, that's a Salman question.
Sorry. Muslim Campus Life. Students kind of redundant, isn't it? How old is the concept, the idea?
Yeah. No, great question. So we started Muslim Campus Life in late 2019, and Dr. Nisa was one of our.
And when?
Late 2019. So 2019, 2020.
Why?
Good question. So,
I'm messing with my list of questions, but why?
Great question. So I've been working in the education space for a long time. So I started working initially as a school counselor, then I got to work in the admissions space. And then most recently, I was working for a nonprofit supporting low-performing high schools. And I was active with the Muslim community, in my high school and college years. And I just remember feeling like I want to kind of return to that level of activism in the community and take what I've learned back to the community. But I remember actually attending a conference in 2017 that was a professional conference called NACAC, which is a National Association for College and Admissions Counselors, I believe. And so there was a session actually on supporting Muslim students. And I remember going to the session just personally. I was there for work, but I went to to the session because I was interested. And I remember the session being pretty full, and I was pretty surprised to see how much interest there was in how much interest there was in learning how to support Muslim students. And then I realized there was no systematic organization that was doing this at a national level. We have amazing people like Dr. Nisa and Chaplain Joshua, who was on the show before, doing amazing work, but a lot of it is in silos. And so how can we bring people to the table and have more of a conversation, not only with Muslim chaplains, but also thinking about student affairs, Muslims in student affairs, Muslims in admissions. We have Muslims in all sorts of facets within the higher ed space, and yet a lot of them are not talking to each other, not developing a vision where we can kind of outline what does Muslim campus life look like for Muslim students. And let's have that conversation with folks who've been in this space at the college level for 10, 20, 30 years, who've dedicated their life to this space, and they have so much to offer. And so that's kind of how the organization came together. And I say that, a lot of us are co-founders because so many of us have been doing this work for many, many years prior to the founding of the organization, right? And so a lot of us have been doing
but I'm
this.
curious here. Let me go back to Dr. Nisa and ask, I'm old and slow. So recently I've been taught by her and others what DEI is. And if we have, did I mess it up? It is DEI, right?
Right.
DEI, then why this siloing of faiths, color, whatever else you all got going? So, Dr. Nisa, why is this siloing going on? Why don't students just go to college?
Who just go to college and miss out on all the fun and activities?
No. I didn't say miss anything.
So, diversity, equity, and inclusion is new. Some campuses have DEI offices, some don't. So it's a very new concept on college campuses to provide inclusion for all of the different entities, gender, identities that are on a campus so that everybody feels like they are welcome and that they belong on the campus. So DEI is very new. Everybody doesn't have it.
Oh.
I would just add.
I thought it started there. Okay.
So if I could add too, that's one of the interesting pieces is that religion is often left out of DEI, which is very interesting.
Well, why isn't it left out? You know what this country is. If we start siloing by faith, doesn't that kind of mess with the Constitution? Not that we have a real Constitution anymore, but doesn't that kind of mess with the constitutional thrust?
So Chaplain, I think Nisa can speak more about this, but from the perspective of a college, I think they want to make every student feel included on campus and feel welcome on campus, right? And that's kind of a lot of the hiring of chaplains, I think, has been in some respect to that effect of trying to make Muslim students feel more included. But when you think about DEI as a national kind of strategy for colleges, a lot of times religion is left out. And so even on the common application, when students apply to college, they actually took out the religious question, I believe in 2019, 2020.
Yay! I wouldn't have answered it. But that's okay. Go ahead.
So the reason I think it's important is because if we don't have data on how many Muslim students are on campus or how many Jewish students are on campus or Hindu students, you can't serve those students on that college campus, right? And so, college, one of the main messages I've been trying to get across for the last 10 plus years is that college is not a transactional exchange, it's a transformational exchange, right? A lot of us in our community, we go to college and we think our kid is going to go there, they're going to get a job, they'll graduate and they move on, right? And so I put in X amount of tuition dollars, in response I get a job, right? It's a very transactional exchange, but in reality,
wait a minute. When did college? That's when I was teaching, my students surprised me that I was furious. What do you mean? I put in dollars. You're supposed to give me an A, so I can go on. When did it become transactional?
So I think a lot of us think it's transactional in that sense, but in reality, it's transformational, right? And we need people like Dr. Nisa at every single college to help guide the students as they go through this experience, right? I was part of my MSA in undergrad. We didn't have a chaplain at the time. And I remember MSA serves a great purpose for many students, but in a lot of cases, it's the blind leading the blind, right? These are students who are peers trying to lead other students who also have classes, who also have multiple responsibilities. You need a staff member. And this is again, I'm not trying to knock the MSA at any level, but you need someone who's a staff member who is dedicated to serving the students, who has a longitudinal view, right? Even with the MSA, every 4 years, the leadership has changed, right? The vision changes every 4 years. You need someone who can develop a long-term vision, right? And so I think chaplains are some of the most underrated and underappreciated folks in our community.
Probably also underpaid, but go ahead.
Yeah.
I think part of it, I'm so glad Salman said the issue about college being a transformational experience. When I talk to parents and I talk to students, I tell them, these young people are in the process of changing their mind. And they can change the right way, the wrong way, they can go straight. I mean, they change their minds about so many things.
Yeah.
And what makes college attractive to parents and students is what it has to offer them in relation to whatever is their primary identity, however they see themselves foremost. And so for a lot of campuses now, they want to attract the best and brightest students from around the country. And so DEI programs, diversity, equity, and inclusion programs allow them to promote the activities that are attractive to students in regard to different areas of who they are, who they see themselves. So for Muslim parents, they want to send their children and put their dollars in a campus where their faith is going to be upheld, where their faith is going to be affirmed, where they can feel this is a safe space for my child who is a Muslim to go and to continue being Muslim and to be affirmed as a Muslim, and they can grow as a Muslim on this campus.
But you don't go to college to learn about your faith.
No,
it's stronger. I'm just muddying the water
no,
here.
and I love muddy waters. We can deal with muddy waters. I talk to parents about this all the time. No, you don't go to a college specifically for that. Maybe that's what your mosque life is for. But while you are at college, you don't want to put that in the back pocket for 4 years. You don't want to put that Muslim identity, let me just put it in the locker, or let me leave it at home for 4 years and I'll pick that back up when I graduate or when I'm done. No, people want to enjoy their Muslim life the whole 4 years are there, maybe 5 years are there. They want to enjoy that and they want to feel empowered as a Muslim to be able to go to class as a Muslim, wear religious identifiers, speak religiously, go to Juma on Friday, not go to Juma on do whatever it is they feel they want to do. And these programs become attractive for families looking to enhance their young person's life based on their religion.
Yeah, and I'll just add.
Sounds like a lot of pressure to me. Because I'm just messing with you. Remember that. Smile. If I was when I was in college, I didn't know really what I wanted to be when I grew up. Even though they were telling me that I was an adult and my parents, the only good thing was my parents couldn't see my grades, right? The other part of that was because I had to identify somewhere as Muslim. Oh, then that means I got to do this, I got to do that. These people are going to be calling on me everywhere I go before I really have a chance to settle in a Muslim persona or not.
And you may think it's like that.
Huh?
You may think there's this heavy pressure, but there really isn't. The universities allow students and really the student organizations, they allow you to be who you are. You're encouraged, if whoever you are as a Muslim, we got you. That's who you are and that's what your participation is. If you don't want anybody to call you, they will not call you. The first time you hang up on them, they're like, okay, that's it for her. We won't call her till the end of the semester or the end of the, whatever. Yeah. So there's very little heavy pressure because the majority of these programs are student-centered and student-run. And so students know other students, and so they know the ones who are all the way in, they know the ones who are hardly in, and so there's very little pressure.
Okay, if you say so. But I want to go back to the summit.
Yes.
Yeah.
Why was there a summit?
Yeah, I think exactly what Dr. Nisat just outlined too. You know, you have these colleges that have chaplains that where Muslim students can feel affirmed, they can have the guidance they need to navigate the different challenges that they are going to experience, dealing with drugs, alcohol, all sorts of other things. I mean, Dr. Nisat, I'm sure, has so many different stories that you could share with us. I know from just many of the chaplains I've spoken to just deal with so many different issues. And so one of the goals with the Muslim Campus Life Summit was, again, to gather all these folks, have a meeting, have a conversation, and credit goes to Abia Ahmed, who's at Stanford University, who piloted the first one last year at the Stanford Markaz Center, where we had, again, Muslim chaplains talking to people in student affairs, talking to people in admissions, talking to people at different points of the university to really, again, develop a vision for what we want the university experience to look like for Muslim students at places like Howard University, where they are blessed to have Dr. Nisat, but also other universities that don't necessarily have Muslim chaplains, right? And so how are we making sure that the campus environment serves our students, right? And so just taking a step back, when we first started having conversations with different colleges around the idea of Muslim campus life, I remember speaking to a chief diversity officer at one of the largest state public institutions and asking them initially, hey, can you just fill out this survey of what resources you guys provide to your Muslim students? And if you go to our website, you can see the Muslim Campus Index is trying to aggregate all this information. And so I asked this chief diversity officer to fill the survey, and her immediate response was, I'm not filling out that survey. And I was like, why not? And she's like, that survey is going to make me look bad. We don't serve our Muslim students. And she knew it. She knew it. I mean, she admitted it straight to my face, right? Like, we don't serve our Muslim students. And so I'm not going to put myself in a position to look bad. And so I asked her, I said, why don't you serve your Muslim students? And the response she gave me was because they don't ask to be served, right? If our students aren't advocating for themselves, if they're not asking for halal food options, if they're not asking for chaplains, if they're not asking for access to prayer spaces. I went to Rutgers University for undergraduate, and now they have an amazing chaplain, Kaiser Aslam. Shout out to him. But when I was there over 10 years ago, we had Jummah prayers in the African American Center because they let us use our space. But we had over 3,000 Muslim students borrowing a center unofficially without the university playing a role in terms of space. I mean, that's just unbelievable. Then you think about the number of students there, and you have to pay for, if you're living on campus, you have to pay for room and board, right, and pay for dining hall passes. And there's no halal food at the dining hall. I have to call 30 minutes in advance so they can unfreeze some chicken nuggets, and that's the only meat option I have as a Muslim student. And so, we're investing all this time, all this energy, and the college isn't going to respond to our needs if we're not also advocating. And so part of, just to go back to the summit question, is to get folks in the room, have these sorts of conversations, and think about how we can systematically change the higher ed space for Muslim students.
Okay, I'm going to ask you to get a glass of water because you made me tired. Get some water. Slow down because I got loads. I'm going to take a break. I want both of you to think about 2 or 3 of the most worrisome, compelling, I gotta do something happenings at this summit. We'll be back in a couple of minutes. This is Professor Aminah Al Deen. I'm speaking with Salman Khan and Dr. Nisa Muhammad about, Muslim college student life. Something about that is redundant, but that's okay. We'll be right back. Assalamu alaikum again. This is Professor Aminah Al Deen, and I'm having a really good conversation with Dr. Nisa Muhammad and Mr. Salman Khan about Muslim student campus life. And while we've touched on how come and where for, I really want to know about the intricacies of this summit because you all had a summit. What what was in there that was overwhelming that you want our audiences to know? Dr. Nisa.
So I think that what I really, and this is the second summit that I participated in, and kudos to Salman and his team for doing this. And I think one of the things that's very important about this summit is just hearing what's going on other campuses, because as he said, sometimes we're often siloed, like. I'm someplace, somebody else is someplace else, and nobody knows what the other person is doing or what's going on. But the other value is knowing about the Muslim professionals that are in other entities besides chaplaincy, knowing about the Muslim professionals that are in student affairs, especially on campuses where there is no Muslim chaplain, that are really advocating for the needs of Muslim students, knowing about Muslim professionals that are doing DEI work, that are chief diversity officers that have a key eye on what is happening to and for the Muslim students. So I think this was very revelatory for me to know that, okay, for students that are on these campuses, there is somebody there looking out for their needs. Because as Salman said, a lot of times Muslim students are slow to advocate for themselves.
Well, wait a minute, because Salman mentioned that too. Why not? I mean, we don't belong to a faith community that says just take it.
I don't know.
I think as a community, we are happy to suffer in silence a lot of times.
Right.
And I think a lot of
I
times.
don't know any African American Muslims who are happy to suffer in silence. Even though some of them are trying to get deported, they're not going to get deported.
I think some people are just afraid to report. They're just afraid to rock. They're afraid to rock the boat because the negative of what can happen. So they see if people call the police for help and they get shot. So these are very traumatizing things that people witness on the news. You make a call for help and you're the victim, but you become the perpetrator and you get arrested. So people see these things and they're traumatized by it. So that, okay, you know what? As some, I better just suffer here in silence, because the media has made reporting so problematic for some people, and that people are really more in tune to stay quiet and suffer in silence than to raise their voice and feel empowered enough to think that somebody's going to do something.
You just told me that Muslim chaplains and staff are there to empower. So who are they empowering?
One of the things that they're working on, I think, is empowering the students. And again, the majority of college campuses do not have a Muslim chaplain, right? I think Howard is the exception, not the rule, like many of the other campuses, or like some of the other campuses that have chaplains. And so at a lot of colleges, you have students who are there just to study. Like I said, they see it as a very transactional relationship. I'm just going to study, put my head down, graduate, and move on. I'm not necessarily here to make waves and make sure we have a Jummah space every Friday, make sure that there's a Ramadan program every week. And obviously, you have some campuses where students are being proactive, but a lot of times, if students don't have an advocate on the inside who works for the university, it can be really challenging for them to make progress, especially if they're going to graduate in 4 years. And so you have this.
You said that Muslim students, all this siloing is going on to empower. Now students are going to campuses that will let them be Muslim. But a part of being Muslim is to speak up for justice and to speak up for yourself and to do all these other things. So you trade all of that Islamic stuff in for getting out the other door. Is that what you're telling me?
Yeah, it's the whole re-education process that has to happen, because as Salman said, it just becomes transactional for some families. Just go to school, get good grades, find a job, graduate, all that other stuff.
You trade in all your integrity and everything else to get through. I mean, all of us did it, and to get out the other end and to get a job, which you may or may not get.
Well, I think, okay, to be fair, also, I think a lot of students didn't sign up to be like the Muslim advocate on college campuses when they get there. That being said,
every Muslim is supposed to be an advocate for I'm gonna get you, Salman, for justice.
I agree with you.
But A.
Yeah. I think a lot of students want to advocate for their needs. They may not necessarily know how to, number one. Number two, they might, again, be busy with extracurriculars. I want to go to grad school. I want to get a job, etc. And so they're overwhelmed and burdened and maybe don't have the time to advocate for their needs. But that is one thing, I hope people who are watching take away is you have to be proactive. You have to be an advocate for your needs. And if there are no Muslim staff members that there probably are, by the way. A lot of colleges have Muslim staff members who you may not know, right? Again, in student affairs and admissions and other parts of the university. So try to find out who those folks are. But then also talk to your community, right? Get your local community involved. This past summer, I got to visit Virginia Tech, and I thought it was really interesting. A lot of the students there go to the local masjid, right? And the local masjid is almost like their hub because it's near campus. And so they may not have a space on campus, but they feel really connected to the local masjid. And so a lot of students go there for the Jama'ah prayers and other things. And so how are you engaging that local masjid to help advocate for your needs, right? The university has a lot of times, like Dr. Nisa said, has a whole office dedicated to diversity, equity, and inclusion, but Muslim students are left out of that conversation because, again, we're not bringing up our needs. We're not speaking up for ourselves.
In the door and say, I'm here, include me. Oh, well, that's right. You just told me they're quiet.
A lot of times they are. Yeah. Not always.
Yeah.
And so one of the things you're telling me is that, okay, you're quiet. While you're going to lose a lot of integrity in the process, you still can tell the people in your community. You can have communities advocate for you. You can have parents advocate for you, etc.
And the parent piece is so, so important. I'm so glad you mentioned that. Parents should be advocating on behalf of students as well. You have a voice, right? And there is so much work every week. It's funny. Alhamdulillah, on the Muslim Campus Life website, we have the Muslim College Guide, we have the Campus Index, we have the Summit that we're working on. But almost every week, there's like a new idea that comes up, like, oh, we have to work on this too. And one of the other pieces that we just saw this past fall, especially with all the rise in Islamophobia, has been alumni engagement. How are we as Muslims being alumni of universities after graduation? And it goes back to this idea of this transactional relationship. A lot of times we graduate, we get our job, we move on. But how are we, showing solidarity with the current students, with, having conversations with folks like Dr. Nisa? If I graduate from Howard University, saying, how can I now contribute as an alumni and support the Ramadan program you guys have? Or how can I come back and be an ambassador for Howard University? How can I get involved in alumni committees? How can I get onto the board of the Alumni Association? Right?
Did they even bother to get involved in alumni stuff?
I think on colleges, campuses around the country, people do. I think at Rutgers, the alumni were very involved in funding their Muslim chaplaincy. I mean, I think primarily involved the alumni.
Oh, well, wait a minute. That was another issue I heard on the grapevine about. In some places, Muslim chaplains, and I don't know about the other support staff, do not get paid by the university.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Their monies have to come from Hillel, like the Jewish groups do, and some of the Christian groups do. They raise money for their religious support staff. Do Muslims actually know that this is what they have to do?
I think when
No.
So the short answer is yes. But for schools that want to have some kind of a Muslim chaplain, they know they have to raise the money some kind of way. And the alumni are a key source upon which to raise the money because they have a connection already to the school. And several campuses around the country, that's how their Muslim chaplaincy is funded, especially Rutgers. Rutgers is a prime example.
Okay, but if you have a silent student body, because they're just trying to get a degree and get out the door, how are they going to advocate? Because Salman says nobody wants to be the advocate. They don't even want to be an advocate for anything. Then how does the awareness of the need come?
Yeah, I think as an alum, you have a lot of power to get involved and start organizing. I think, Dr. Nisa mentioned Rutgers as a prime example. I think Cornell also fundraised for their chaplain. There's other examples. Specifically, public universities typically have to fundraise from outside the university, because the university won't fund a religious chaplain, as opposed to a private university, which we've seen several hire Muslim chaplains. But as an alum, I think you have a lot of power to come back to the community, get involved, try to think more strategically, or again, around what is the vision for this university and their Muslim campus life experience going forward. Are Muslims who are entering this college having their faith affirmed, or are they having it challenged, and we see them kind of drifting away from Islam as a result? Right, those are real possibilities that are happening at colleges across the country.
Well, this is a very interesting transformational, an understanding rather of transformation, because as you're transforming from a kid who is dependent, ultra dependent, but also has to, parents are still responsible for, to an independent adult. Now you're lacking voice as you try to get this piece of paper to get out the door to get a job, which means whatever job you get, you're still going to lack voice because you haven't exercised your voice. Special. Salman, I know that because I read it, that you put together, began to do some analytics on colleges, Muslim students present. Miriam, can you bring that up? I thought it was very interesting, but I want to beat you up on what's not there, of course.
Yes, it's fair.
Now, this is a Muslim college guide. Where can they get this? That's number one.
So that's a great resource that we compiled that has the advice from Muslim chaplains, from higher ed staff who happen to be Muslim. Totally free on our website. Just look up the Muslim College Guide. You can download it if you scroll
Wait a
down.
minute, nobody could understand that. I didn't even understand it. Where can you find it?
So on our website, it's a totally free resource that you can download and check out. So under Muslim College Guide. But I think the resource you're referring to is called the Muslim Campus Index. So I don't know if you can go to that slide. Yeah, there it is.
Now, Miriam, do you have an inside picture of some of the stuff I just found fascinating? Because oftentimes people complain and then there are no analytics to back up the complaint. And I love the fact that there were, there we go. Now, talk to us about this. What did you go for? Why these categories and not others?
Great question. So I should preface by saying that this is version 1. There is a version 2 that we're working on that's meant to include more characteristics. But more, really what we wanted to do was to start aggregating the different resources that were available to Muslim students on different college campuses in a single place. And so if I'm a family that's in high school thinking about what college I want my child to go to or what colleges I want them to apply to, I can go onto our website, to the Muslim Campus Life website, and start to see, okay, does this college have a chaplain who is full-time or part-time? Does this college have a dedicated prayer space for me as a Muslim student? Does this college have halal dining options for me as a student? Does this have Muslim student organizations on campus? Are there access to alternative housing options, right? This is a big problem at a lot of universities where there may not be, if I'm a Muslim student, I mean, there's horror stories I can tell you about certain colleges that I'll save, but if the dorming isn't flexible, can I get access to a single gendered dormitory or maybe a sober housing dormitory? Those are maybe colleges where I'll feel more comfortable. And there's also, on the college counseling and admission side, there's also a lot of Muslim families who don't necessarily want their child to go and travel away for college, right? They want them to stay closer to home. But if you knew that you had a Dr. Nisa at the university that you were expecting your child to go to, and I could call her, or email her, get in touch with her, I think I would feel a lot more comfortable, or I think a lot of parents might feel more comfortable sending their children away. But if we as a community don't even know that we have access to Muslim chaplains on a college campus, then we are already like shooting ourselves in the foot by not even applying to those universities or making those connections earlier on. So this was really trying to address that information gap that we have as a community.
You know, I'm sitting up here smiling as I did the other night. Okay. Single sex. It could be any sex or attribution of sex. It's just that there's one of them.
Correct.
Oh,
So if like a female dormitory, a male dormitory. So some colleges will give students an option to opt into female-only housing or male-only housing, for example.
okay. Then you have substance-free. So there are dormitories that permit substances.
So if you're over 18, I think beer is legal. You know, in some places, marijuana is legal in some states, some cities. So all of these things, parents, it's not like going to college used to be. It's
I
a very,
I mean,
it's a very different experience, and colleges are trying to cater to the variety of needs that they see students having. You know, some students don't care if they're in a same-sex dorm or not. You know, one floor is female, the next floor is male. Some students don't care. It's not an issue for them. But for a lot of Muslim parents, that's an issue for them. They don't want their children in a multi-sex dormitory. They don't want their children in a dorm that allows beer, alcohol, wine, marijuana, because these things are legal over a certain age. And so they want to ensure that their students, that their children that they are sending away to college are in
but
as
they're no longer children.
yeah, but parents don't see that. They don't. The parents still think of them as their children. They don't see them as, well, these are my young adults I'm sending away. No, these are their children.
Okay.
These are their children, and increasingly now, students are coming to college at younger and younger ages. So you may see a 16-year-old in college. You may see a 17-year-old in college. They are totally not legal in any sense of the word, but they would have privy if they lived in a dorm. They would be around this kind of environment. And some parents, that's just not what's suitable for them.
Now that I have, and you also have next to Columbia, 5+ Muslim student organizations. Tell me about that, just a little bit.
I don't know the community has filled this out. So we ask if anyone's watching and you don't see your college listed here and you have intimate knowledge about the Muslim campus experience, please fill out the survey. It's at the bottom, actually. Number one.
It could be like for law school students and for this and young people in particular professions.
Yeah.
For example. Okay.
So
yes.
there could be the Muslim Law Students Association. There could be the Black Muslim Students Association. I mean, this is a variety. There could be the Muslim medical students, the Muslim accountants. I mean, so I think NYU has like 10, different Muslim organizations, because these organizations cater to Muslims in a particular area of their life. So they combine religion and profession.
Exactly. And
Go ahead.
Sorry, just on the housing piece, I'll share one story without mentioning the specific college or chaplain, but there was one of the chaplains I was speaking to was like, and this is at a prestigious elite university. And, he was telling me every single year when the students get accepted, the parents call him and they are like so happy. Oh my God, this is amazing. I can't believe it. And they're just jubilant, right? And then he says at the start of the second year, those same parents call him and start cursing him out and saying, how could you do this to me? I didn't know this. I didn't sign up for this. And the reason why is because specifically with the Muslim sisters, the first year is single gendered dorms at this university. And then the second year, they switch to mixed gendered dorms. And so the Muslim students have to go into the bathroom and they'll see both genders taking showers, using the bathroom. So just your living.
They don't have a bathroom in their room.
No, the shared bathrooms. And so Muslim students will go to this university and have to deal with that on a day-to-day basis. We're talking about something as basic as using the bathroom, which you might do multiple times a day, taking a shower, brushing your teeth, etc. And so even on that level, just thinking about what the lived experience is going to be like for the student is so, so important.
That must be funny. Oh, no, that's not nice.
Not so funny for parents.
For students.
It is very interesting. Let me ask one quick question before we take our last break. What is the goal of this particular portion of your guideline book? Of the, I don't know if there are going to be additional indices or if this is it, but what is the goal of this indice? Just to bring some awareness, perhaps?
I appreciate the question. So like I mentioned, this is version 1. We are in the process of working on version 2. And one of the things that we do want to introduce is somewhat of a rating scale. And so what that means is you get a sense of this is a 3-star college or a 4-star college when it comes to Muslim life. And one of the goals with that is really to encourage colleges to improve on those ratings. You know, we've presented at a few different places, and non-Muslim higher education staff members have told us, hey, you should make a rating out of this, which we were already working on, but it was just interesting that they themselves mentioned that, because they were like, the colleges are only going to respond when they see that they're ranked low on serving Muslim students, and that's going to force them to care or maybe not care, right? And so if we have this distribution of colleges, some that are really good for Muslim students, some that are, we know are not great for Muslim students, you know, we can share horror story after horror story about what some Muslim students have experienced. You know, early on, I did a lot of phone calls with different staff members. And I remember one staff member told me that there was a Muslim student, and we should probably transition to Islamophobia after the break maybe, but you know, there was one Muslim student prior to, you know, many years ago who was just walking across the quad of the university campus, and someone had lit her hijab on fire, right? And that story was not reported anywhere. That story was not, you know, nothing kind of ensued after that story. But understanding what colleges are going to be good for Muslim students and affirming for Muslim students, and what colleges are not necessarily going to put in that effort, that is useful information, I think, for families who are navigating this process and trying to choose a
Absolutely.
college.
Well, we're going to take another very quick break of about a minute, so that I want you to come back and talk to me about the atmosphere that you all talk to each other about in this summit, if you don't mind. This is Professor Aminah Al Deen, and I'm talking with Dr. Nisa Muhammad and Salman Khan about our wonderful children off to college. I'll be right back. Assalamu alaikum. This is Professor Aminah Al Deen, and I've had a wonderful and extremely informative conversation with Dr. Nisa Muhammad and Salman Khan about Muslims in college life. I think the serious, equally serious uh, situation we have not talked about, and I know it's tension filled, and I don't know what the limitations are on your ability to speak. But phrase stuff, you know, you all are wordsmiths. Phrase stuff in ways that don't make you have to come live with me. Um, we read in the newspapers, this is happening, that is happening. Students are being driven out of programs, now no longer able to graduate for their support of one cause or another. It hasn't only been singled on one cause. So, in general, some of you have listed it under an Islamophobia, okay? Because it's about Muslims wherever they are, whether it's Pakistan or it's Uyghur Muslims in China, wherever. It's nope, don't talk about that. Up, that's anti Semitic. Up, that's anti American. What is, as you all were able to sit with each other, what is the atmosphere? Is it getting better? Is it the same? Are we even near a peak?
So if we have reached the peak, that would be great, but it's not getting better. It's actually getting worse on a lot of campuses, where students are attacked for their support of various causes. And it's not even just Muslim students that are being attacked. other students that support Muslims are being attacked as well. Students are losing internships, they're getting job offers revoked, fellowships they're losing, and just for what they consider to be the right of free speech, to speak up and say, this is what I support, this is who I support, this is what I am involved in. And it's like it's a swift backlash, so that if we thought some people didn't want to speak up before, a lot of students are really muted now. They are really muted now, but some students that they're having hunger strikes, around the country, and so people are very vested in justice. As you said, Muslims want to see what is
Yeah,
just.
yeah, yeah.
And yeah, just to build on that, I think we as a community should be incredibly proud of our college students. I think they are endured tremendous difficulties in the last 4 to 5 months. And I haven't seen many leaders in the community acknowledge that or talk about that. In a lot of ways, we've glossed over that. And so, to the students' credits, I think they're on the front lines of advocating for human rights and Palestinian rights across the globe. And I think that's something that we should celebrate, in that they are putting themselves in harm's way in various ways, as Dr. Nisa outlined, losing jobs,
Mhm.
losing internships, facing all sorts of social pressures as a result. And so students, I think we have to really, and as parents especially who are watching, get involved in this process and help protect our students on campus. And if your student is at a college, call the college and ask them, how are you preventing my student from experiencing harm, right? And all sorts of other kind of microaggressions in the classrooms, that if they're wearing, the Palestinian hatta or kafia, right? There's all sorts of issues that they're facing. And as a community, there's so much work we need to do. And so one of the things that you'll find on our website too is this campus Islamophobia tracker that we launched in November, which is trying to capture what incidents happen to Muslim students at what colleges, and then document that in a very transparent way. And so we are telling people what happened and where. And there's also a pledge that you can sign, inshallah. Feel free to jump and do that. But one of the important things that we're seeing is that students are not reporting the incidents of Islamophobia and anti-Muslim racism that they're experiencing. And just as a side note, there's a lot of issues with the word Islamophobia. This is not like a clinical phobia of Muslims. It doesn't really make sense. Put that aside. But that's the most commonly used term. But one of the things we're trying to just educate the community on is we have to report. There are horrible incidents taking place. And so Muslim Campus Life was fortunate enough to work with the Department of Education to organize 2 student listening sessions where we had students from across the country share their experiences. And there are students experiencing tremendous difficulty. And I don't even know that parents know what parents are aware of what's happening on campus, if community leaders know what's happening on campus.
As you all, and we have to go, unfortunately, but I'm not going to let this issue go. As you all have spoken, I don't think that the general community knows. This program is just one. And like I said at the beginning, nobody's doing it. So I'm going to try to encourage the 2 of you and other programs to have you on. It's such an important conversation. It's our next generation of leadership and leaders in knowledge, leadership in the masjid, leadership in the community that is at stake here. I want to, hate to cut you short, thank both of you, Dr. Nisa Muhammad and Salman Khan. I will be in touch. I'm not willing to let this go because it's not being talked about anywhere until at least it's talked about everywhere in some form or another. And with Ramadan coming, that is very, very important. Thank you again. Please stay on after. Salam alaikum. This is Professor Aminah Al Deen with Critical Talk. I have had a very informative 50 minutes with 2 incredible workers who just, I mean, I can't imagine, because I know they know what they see. This is Critical Talk, a production of Sound Vision Television, and we will see you next Monday. Salam alaikum.